Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. Day 1300 of my captivity. Crabs, clams, shrimp, scallops, cockles, abalone, fish eggs. This is the diet of a giant Pacific octopus, according to the plaque next to my tank. The sea must be a delightful buffet. All of these delicacies free for the taking. But what do they offer here? Mackerel, halibut, and above all herring. Herring, so much herring. They are foul creatures, disgusting little slips of fish. I am sure the reason for their abundance here is their low cost. The sharks in the main tanks are rewarded for their dullness with fresh grouper, and I'm given defrosted herring, sometimes still partially frozen even. This is why I must take matters into my own arms when I desire the sublime texture of fresh oyster, when I yearn to feel the sharp crack of my beak crushed as This is why I must take matters into my own arms when I desire the sublime texture of fresh oyster, when I yearn to feel the sharp crack of my beak crushing a crab in its shell, when I crave the sweet, firm flesh of the sea cucumber. Sometimes my captors will drop me a pity scallop if they are attempting to lure me into cooperation with a medical examination, or bribe me into playing one of their games. And once in a while Terry will slip me a mussel or two, just because. Of course, I have sampled crabs, clams, shrimp, cockles, and abalone many times. I simply must take it upon myself to fetch them after hours. Fish eggs are an ideal snack, in terms of both gastronomical pleasure and nutritional value. One might make a third list here, which would consist of things humans clamour for, but most intelligent life would consider entirely unfit for consumption. For example, every last offering in the vending machine of the lobby. But tonight another smell lured me, sweet, salty, savoury. I found its source in the rubbish bin, its remains ensconced in a flimsy white container. Whatever it was delicious, but had I not been fortunate, it could have been my downfall. The cleaning woman, she saved me. Falsehood cookies. There was once 7 nitwits. Now there are 4. Every few years brings another empty place at the table. My word, Tova! Mary Ann Minetti lowers a teapot onto her dining table, staring at Tova's arm. The pot is swaddled in a crocheted yellow cosy, probably a project someone knitted once, back when knitting was something the nitwits actually did in their weekly luncheons. The teapot cosy matches the yellow, bejewelled barrette at Mary Ann's temple, the clip holding back tawny curls. Janice Kim eyes Tova's arm as she fills her mug. An allergy, maybe? A swirl of oolong steam fogs her round spectacles, and she takes them off and wipes them on the hem of her t-shirt, which Tova suspects must belong to Janice's son, Timothy, because it's at least 3 sizes too large, and emblazoned with the logo of a Korean shopping centre down in Seattle where Timothy invested a restaurant in some years back. That mark, Tova says, tugging the sleeve of her sweater down, is nothing. You should get it checked out. Barb Vanderhoof plops a 3rd sugar cube into her tea. Her cropped grey hair's been combed into gel-set spikes, which is one of her favoured styles lately. When she first debuted this look, she joked that it was only fitting for a Barb to have barbs, which made the nitwits laugh. Not for the first time, Tova imagines poking her finger down on one of the thorns of her friend's head. Would it prick her, like one of the sea urchins down at the aquarium, or would it crumble under her touch? It's nothing, Tova repeats. Heat seeps into the tips of her ears. Well, let me tell you. Barb takes a slurp of her tea and goes on. You know my Andy? She had this rash last year when she came up for Easter. Mind you, I never saw it myself. It was in a sort of indelicate place, if you catch my drift. But not the sort of rash one gets from indecent behaviour, mind you. No, it was just a rash. Anyway, I told her she should see my dermatologist. He's wonderful. But my Andy is beyond stubborn, you know, and that rash kept getting worse, and Janice cuts off Barb. Tova, do you want Peter to recommend someone? Janice's husband, Dr. Peter Kim, is retired but well connected in the medical community. I don't need a doctor. Tova forces a weak smile. It was a minor incident at work. At work? An incident? What happened? Tova draws in a breath. She can still feel the tentacle wrapped around her wrist. The spots had faded overnight, but they remained dark enough to see plainly. She tugs her sleeve down again. Should she tell them? A mishap with some of the cleaning equipment, she finally says. Around the table, 3 pairs of eyes narrow at her. Mary Ann wipes an imaginary spot from the tabletop with one of her tea towels. That job of yours, Tova. Last time I was down at the aquarium, I nearly lost my lunch from the smell. How do you manage? Tova takes a chocolate chip cookie from the platter Mary Ann set out earlier. Mary Ann warms the cookies in the oven before the ladies arrive. One can't have tea, she always comments, without something homemade to nibble on. The cookies came from a package Mary Ann bought at the Shopway. All of the nitwits know this. That old dump. Of course it smells, Janice says. But really, Tova, are you okay? Manual labour at our age. Why must you work? Barb crosses her arms. I worked down at St. Anne's for a while after Rick died, to pass the time. They asked me to run the whole office, you know. Filing, Mary Ann mutters. You did filing. And you quit because you couldn't keep it organised the way you liked, Janice says, her voice dry. But the point is, you weren't down on your hands and knees washing floors. Mary Ann leans in. Tova, I hope you realise if you need help. Help? Yes, help. I don't know how we'll arrange your finances. Tova stiffens. Thank you, but I have no such need. But if you did, Mary Ann's lips knit together. I do not, Tova replies quietly. And this is true. Tova's bank account would cover her modest needs several times over. She does not need charity. Not from Mary Ann, not from anyone else. And further, what a thing to bring up, and all because of a little set of marks on her arm. After rising from the table, Tova sets her teacup down and leans on the counter. The window over the kitchen sink overlooks Mary Ann's garden, where her rhododendron bushes cower under the low grey sky. The tender magenta petals seem to shiver as a breeze ruffles the branches, and Tova wishes she could tuck them back into their buds. The chill in the air is unseasonable for mid-June. Summer is certainly dragging its feet this year. On the windowsill, Mary Ann has arranged a collection of religious paraphernalia. Little glass angels with cherub faces, candles, a small army of shiny silver crosses in various sizes, lined up like soldiers. Mary Ann must polish them daily to keep them gleaming. Janice cups her shoulder. Tova, earth to Tova. Tova can't help but smile. The lilt in Janice's voice makes Tova think Janice has been watching sitcoms again. Please don't be upset. Mary Ann didn't mean anything by it. We're just worried. Thank you, but I'm fine. Tova pats Janice's hand. Janice raises one of her neatly groomed eyebrows, steering Tova back towards the table. It's clear Janice understands how deeply Tova wishes to change the subject, because she goes for low-hanging conversational fruit. So, Barb, what's new with the girls? Oh, did I tell you? Barb draws in a dramatic breath. No one has ever needed to ask Barb twice to muse on the lives of her daughters and grandchildren. Andy was supposed to bring the girls up for their summer break, but they had a hitch in their plans. That's exactly what she said, a hitch. Janice wipes her glasses with one of Mary Ann's embroidered napkins. Is that right, Barb? They haven't been up since last Thanksgiving. She and Mark took the kids to Las Vegas for Christmas. Can you believe that? Who spends a holiday in Las Vegas? Barb pronounces both words, Las and Vegas, with equal weight and contempt, the way someone might say spoiled milk. Janice and Mary Ann both shake their heads, and Tova takes another cookie. All 3 women nod along as Barb launches into a story about her daughter's family, who lived 2 hours away in Seattle, which one might conclude was another hemisphere for how infrequently Barb purports to see them. I told them I sure hope to hug those grandbabies soon. Lord only knows how long I'll be around. Janice sighs. Enough, Barb. Excuse me a moment. Tova's chair scrapes on the linoleum. As one would gather from the name, the Nitwits began as a knitting club. 25 years ago, a handful of Sowell Bay women met to swap yarn. Eventually it became a refuge for them to escape empty homes, bittersweet voids left by children grown and moved on. For this reason, among others, Tova had initially resisted joining. Her void held no sweetness, only bitterness, at the time. Eric had been gone 5 years. How delicate those wounds were back then, how little it took to nudge the scabs out of place and start the bleeding anew. The faucet in Mary Ann's powder room let out a squeak as Tova turns on the tap. Their complaints haven't changed much over the years. First, it was what a pity the university is such a long drive, and what a shame we only get phone calls on Sunday afternoons. Now it's grandbabies and great-grandbabies. These women have always worn motherhood big and loud on their chests. Tova keeps hers inside, sunk deep in her guts like an old bullet, private. A few days before Eric disappeared, Tova had made an almond cake for his 18th birthday. The house carried the marzipan smell for days after. She still remembers how it lingered in her kitchen like a clueless house guest who didn't know when to leave. At first, Eric's disappearance was considered a runaway case. The last person who saw him was one of the deckhands, working the 11 o'clock southbound ferry, the last boat of the night, and the deckhand reported nothing unusual. Eric was meant to lock up the ticket booth afterwards, which he always did, dutifully. Eric was so pleased they trusted him with the key. It was only a summer job after all. The sheriff said they found the ticket booth unlocked, with the register cash fully accounted for. Eric's backpack was stashed under the chair, along with his portable cassette player and headphones, even his wallet. Before they ruled out the possibility of foul play, the sheriff speculated that perhaps Eric had stepped away for a short time, planning to come back. Why would he leave his booth alone when on duty? Tova had never understood. Will always had a theory there was a girl involved, but no trace of any girl, or any boy for that matter, was ever found. His friends insisted he wasn't seeing anyone at the time. If Eric had been seeing someone, the world would have known about it. Eric was a popular kid. 1 week later, they found the boat. A rusty old sun cat no one had noticed was missing from the tiny mariner that used to be next to the ferry dock. It washed ashore with an anchor rope cut off clean. Eric's prints were on the rudder. Evidence was thin, but it all pointed to the boy taking his own life, the sheriff said. The neighbours said. The newspapers said. Everyone said. Tova had never believed that, not for 1 minute. She pats her face dry, blinking at the reflection in the powder room mirror. The Nitwits have been her friends for years, and sometimes she still feels as if she's a mistaken jigsaw piece who found her way into the wrong puzzle. Tova retrieves her cup from the sink, pours herself some fresh oolong, and slips back into her chair in the conversation. It's a discussion of Mary Ann's neighbour who is suing his orthopaedist after a poorly done surgery. The ladies agree the physician ought to be held responsible. Then there's a round of cooing over photos at Janice's little Yorkie Rollo, who often comes along to the Nitwits in Janice's handbag. Today Rollo is home with a sour stomach. Poor Rollo, Mary Ann says. Do you think he ate something bad? You should stop feeding him human food, Barb says. Rick used to give our Sully plate scraps behind my back, but I could tell every time. Oh, the smelly shit. Barbara, Mary Ann says, eyes wide. Janet and Tova laugh. Well, pardon my language, but that dog could stink up a whole room. May she rest in peace. Barb presses her hands together prayer-like. Tova knows how dearly Barb loved her golden retriever, Sully. Perhaps more than she loved her late husband, Rick. And in the space of a few months last year, she lost both. Tova wonders sometimes if it's better that way, to have one's tragedies clustered together, to make good use of all the existing rawness, get it over with in one shot. Tova knew there was a bottom to those depths in despair. Once your soul was soaked through with grief, any more simply ran off, overflowed, the way maple syrup on Saturday morning pancakes always cascaded onto the table whenever Eric was allowed to pour it himself. At 3 in the afternoon, the nitwits are gathering their jackets and pocketbooks from the backs of their chairs when Mary Ann pulls Tova aside. "Please do let us know if you need any help." Mary Ann clasps Tova's hand. The other woman's olive Italian skin, young-looking and smooth comparatively. Tova's Scandinavian genes, so kind in her youth, had turned on her as she aged. By 40, her corn-silk hair was grey. By 50, the lines on her face seemed etched in clay. Now she sometimes catches a glimpse of her profile reflected in a shop window. The way her shoulders have begun to stoop, she wonders how this body can possibly be hers. "I assure you, I don't need help." "If that job becomes too much, you'll quit, won't you?" "Certainly." "All right." Mary Ann doesn't look convinced. "Thank you for the tea, Mary Ann." Tova slips into her jacket and smiles at the group of them. "Lovely afternoon as always." Tova pats the dashboard and steps on the accelerator, coaxing another downshift from the hatchback. The car groans as it climbs. Mary Ann's house sits in the bottom of a wide valley that once was nothing but daffodil fields. Tova remembers riding through them when she was a little girl next to her older brother Lars, in the back seat of the family's Packard. Papa at the steering wheel, Mama next to him with her window down, clutching the scarf under her chin so it wouldn't fly off. Tova would roll her window down too, and crane her neck as far as she dared. The valley smelled of sweet manure. Millions of yellow bonnet heads blurred together into a sea of sunshine. Nowadays, the valley floor is a suburban grid. Every couple of years the county has a big to-do about reworking the road snaking up the hillside. Mary Ann is always writing letters to the council about it. Too steep, she argues, too prone to mudslides. "Not too steep for us," Tova says as the hatchback pulls over the crest. On the other side, a spot of sun glows on the water, squeezing through a crack in the clouds. Then, as if pulled by puppet strings, the crack opens, bathing Puget Sound in clear light. "Well, how about that?" Tova says, flipping down the visor. Squinting, she turns right onto Soundview Drive, which runs along the ridgeline above the water, towards home. Sun, at last. Her asters need deadheading, and for weeks the chilly, wet weather, unseasonable even by Pacific Northwest standards, has dampened her enthusiasm for yard work. At the thought of doing something productive, she presses the gas harder. Perhaps she can finish the entire flower bed before supper. She breezes through the house for a glass of water on her way to the back garden, pausing to press the blinking red button on her answering machine. That machine is perpetually full of nonsense. People trying to sell her stuff, but she always clears out her messages first thing. How can anyone function with a red light blinking in the background? The first recording is someone soliciting donations. Delete. The second message is clearly a scam. Who would be foolish enough to call back and give a bank account number? Delete. The third message is an error. Muffled voices, then a click. A butt dial, as Janice Kim refers to them. A hazard of the ridiculous practice of keeping phones in pockets. Delete. The fourth message begins with a stretch of silence. Tova's finger is about to punch the delete button when a woman's voice comes on. "Tova Sullivan." She clears her throat. "This is Maureen Cochran from the Carter Village Long-Term Care Centre." Tova's water glass clinks as it hits the counter. "I'm afraid I have some bad news." With a sharp click, Tova punches the button to hush the machine. She doesn't need to hear any more. It's a message she's been expecting for quite some time. Her brother, Lars.